From its iconic braid to the sesame seed exterior, Scali bread is a classic no matter how you slice it. We'll start with a sponge. This is made by combining 2/3 cup of all-purpose flour, 1/8 of a teaspoon of yeast, and 1/2 cup of room temperature water. Using whatever you have on hand, stir until well combined. We're using a dough whisk just to be fancy, but a wooden spoon or spatula works fine. Cover tightly with plastic wrap and let the sponge sit for at least 6 hours. The sponge can sit at room temperature for up to 24 hours. It's been 6 hours, so now we'll make the dough. We'll add 2 2/3 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of salt, and a teaspoon and a quarter of yeast to a mixing bowl. Whisk together to combine. Next, transfer the sponge to a liquid measuring cup. Add 3/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons of room temperature water, 3 tablespoons of sugar, and 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. Stir until well combined. Attach a dough hook. Set the mixer to low and slowly add the sponge to the dry ingredients. Mix together until the dough starts to pull together and no dry flour remains. This should take about 2 minutes. Carefully scrape down the bowl with a spatula to make sure all the dry flour gets incorporated. Next, increase the mixer speed to medium-low. Knead the dough until it's smooth and elastic. This should take about 8 to 10 minutes. It's been about 10 minutes and the dough passes the window pane test. If you see light through the dough when stretched, then the gluten has properly developed. Turn out the dough onto a floured surface and knead by hand to form a smooth, round ball. Place the dough, seam side down, into a lightly greased bowl. Cover tightly with plastic wrap and let it rise at room temperature for 1.5 to 2 hours. After 2 hours, the dough has roughly doubled in size. Take 2 baking sheets and line them with aluminum foil. Spray the foil with cooking spray and set aside. Flour your work surface and deflate the dough. Form the dough into a rough square and divide into even thirds. Form each piece into a rope about 10 inches long. Pinch the ropes together at the top and begin the braid. If you've ever braided hair before, it's the exact same thing. When the braid is complete, gently transfer the loaf onto the sheet pans and loosely cover with greased plastic wrap. Let it rise for another 1 to 1.5 hours. You'll know it's done rising when you can poke it with your finger and the dough springs back slowly. Next, make an egg wash. This is 1 egg, lightly beaten with a tablespoon of water and a pinch of salt. Brush the loaf with the egg wash and sprinkle on sesame seeds. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees and set the oven rack to the middle position. Bake until golden brown and the loaf reads an internal temperature of 205 to 210 degrees. This should take about 35 to 40 minutes. Rotate the sheet pan 180 degrees halfway through the bake. Once it's done baking, transfer the loaf to a cooling rack. Allow it to cool completely for about 3 hours. Well, that's it for today. We hoped you liked it, and as always, if you have any questions or issues during your bake, please reach out in the comments section below. Take care and keep baking.